I'll tell you some of the things we're doing at Central Missouri Community Action. I mean, this recovery money is phenomenal. When I compare this to last year we got a check, for $1,800 or whatever, and that we didn't see anything happen out of that. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds are still trickling down. We haven't seen any money at CMCA, but it's because the state is still working through their processes.
Well, it takes a while to set all that
Each of the state departments that has any control over any of that funding has to set their regulations. They have to approve a state plan and have public hearings. So it's taking longer than probably the general public would like. I mean, I'd like to be able to say we've hired so many people and all these things. We probably will be hiring about 50 people over the next couple of months as funding comes down.
What's your total?
We're probably going to be looking at around $7 million. We have 200 employees now. We'll be ramping up to about 250.
And that's just in mid-Missouri?
Yes, that's in 8 counties here.
And what are those 200 people doing exactly? Like, I know that sounds like kind of a skeptical question, but honestly, what does that entail? We already have 200 people out there helping, and we're going to get another 50 more. How is that going to help the people that are newly affected by this situation?
I can go a million directions with that. Our largest program is Head Start and Early Head Start. So we're providing quality, comprehensive early childhood programming for families across mid-Missouri. So we're helping people to be able to work. We're helping them to give them time that they can work. We're also working on family development so that if there are challenges, barriers in their lives, domestic violence, substance abuse, we're working on those issues too so that they can be employable. We have a weatherization program, and that's going to be getting a lot of the recovery funds. And that is a program that, while we do utility assistance on one side, the really more thoughtful approach is to decrease consumption in the first place. So rather than paying part of the bill after the fact, we can go into a home, put in insulation, seal the windows, replace the doors, and decrease their consumption and decrease their bills. So long term, they're saving money off of it.
I bought my Section 8 house, by the way, And back in the day, that program was actually there. And still today, those same things, you know what I mean?
This came up in a previous program, too, this idea of utilities being a major expense. And Brenda, I want to kick this to you for a second from a personal finance standpoint. If you're somebody who's in that situation and you're trying to sort out how am I going to make it on little or no money now because I just lost my job, how do you sort that out? What are the decisions that are healthy to make in that situation, and how do you prioritize in a good way?
Well, I'll go back to what Darin said a while ago, and that is that every single family who's in poverty has, and you said for a different reason, I would say for a different set of reasons. It's a whole dynamic that goes with that family. So it's really hard to say. Families might have resources that are non-financial that they could tap into to help them with some of their financial issues, or they might not. There might be somebody in the household who's disabled, or there might not. So, the average family spends a third of their income on housing and utilities. If somebody on low wages did that, they wouldn't even be able to pay rent, much less utilities. So what tends to happen is that they get very creative. They'll cut down on food. Maybe they'll go to the food pantry and get some food. Maybe they'll, use some coupons, get some cheaper food and cut back that way. Maybe their kids won't get school shoes, or maybe they won't get to do something at school that they'd like to do because they've got to keep those utilities turned on. And sometimes they don't keep the utilities turned on. And, that's one of the major reasons that kids change schools is that their family gets a utility shut-off notice. Then they're kicked out of the place where they're living, so they have to go find some other place that's substandard.
We see people go all summer with no hot water.
Exactly.
They just have the electricity turned off for the summer, and that's a budgeting decision. That's not being irresponsible.
It's a rational decision.
Well, and then too, to take it from a policy standpoint as well. I mean, in a lot of states, you can't be shut off, right? In our state, they have what they call the cold weather rule, and people know when that date is because they will come and shut your stuff off.
Right.
And so. And then it goes back to whether sometimes there are summer funds to help people, other times there have not been.
Right. Yeah, Brenda, you mentioned different circumstances for different people. For the other two of you, have you noticed any patterns in terms of who is showing up now that didn't used to? Are there demographics? Are there different racial ethnic groups that are being affected in different ways? This was a question that came up in the chat room as well.
I can't say that I'm seeing any discrimination in terms of who's coming in, except that, they typically are more blue-collar type of jobs, but I'm not seeing any particular racial type or age. it's pretty across the board. I mean, that's what we're seeing.
Right, and I think I have to agree with that. I think, and it's particularly because where I live is in Mexico, Missouri, and I'm also out in some other communities in towns like Hannibal and places like Shalbina. So we're out there in that part of the country, and what we do see is that more people are getting laid off at a, you know, in a flat. Like more people at one time being laid off.
Yeah.
The other thing is that temp agencies are being bombarded, and there are, before when we were talking about the people that kind of, you know how to survive, but don't necessarily get up in the mainstream of normal employment. I mean, I just talked to 2 people this morning actually that said that they went to the career center, and you know they couldn't even give them a name of a temp agency that was offering any job.
We had a receptionist position open just recently. 200 applications.
Wow.
Right.
200. I mean, like in days.
So I'm just saying from that standpoint.
Well, and one thing I've noticed is that I tend to get calls more from professionals than I used to. I mean, I have a website, so I used to get a lot of calls from people on public assistance and still do. Last week, I got a call from a nurse in St. Louis who was 57 years old, and she had just been caught in a nursing downsizing and thought that maybe she'd tried to get another job and couldn't get one. She said, I don't know if it's age discrimination or not, but I don't know what to do. And so that's kind of an example of folks who would never have to think that way.
And what did you tell her to do?
I told her, I gave her some resources. You know, I sent her to some places on the website about finding another job, you know, how to deal with it in the interim if you were, you know, struggling to get by. And, you know, I mostly listen to her. Sometimes I don't have any answers. Sometimes people just want to be able to use me or Robin or Darin too, probably as a sounding board to think through their situation, because I think really they have the answers. But what I try to do is connect them with resources that I know are out there and just help them hang in there.
But we would, I mean, for us to not mention the fact, I mean, we are a nonpartisan group. So when I say this, I'm not saying this by any other means than the fact, these are facts. Public programs, I mean, when they time limited TANF and didn't time limit poverty, when they seriously, they did.
Right.
When they took their Medicaid cuts in 2005, and you created over 150,000 more uninsured Missourians. When you're talking about local economies who are now having to raise taxes and revenues because state revenue isn't supporting education. I mean, all of these things did not happen. I mean, there is not a safety net anymore in this, and that's what I want to put out to listeners.
I want to come right back to that for 1 second. I just need to do a quick ID here. You're listening to Intersection, a program of KBIA. I'm Ruben Stern, talking with Darin Preis from Central Missouri Community Action, Brenda Procter, a specialist on personal finance, and Robin Acree, the executive director of Grow Grassroots Organizing. Our topic today is the economy, and how are you and others you know feeling the economic downturn? Join the conversation by emailing us your thoughts to intersection@kbia.gmail.com, or you can call us at 882-8925. And I want to come back to a question that came up in the chat room related to what you just said. You know, you brought up healthcare and you brought up the safety net generally. And the question that came up is, why is that not politically viable? Why, if this is publicized that the legislators are not supporting healthcare, are not supporting this kind of safety net, why is there not political pressure on them to support different policies? What's going on there?
It's money. It's money that we spend in Missouri. It's $7 billion on healthcare between Medicaid and insurance.
I don't believe it's about money at all. I believe it's about political will, and I believe it's about.
But who do you think is driving the political will?
The political
people
will.
with money.
Okay.
See, I didn't think she understood what you meant by that. So
yeah, finish your thought. Yeah. What do you mean by money is the reason?
I mean that the insurance company, the insurance industries, the lobbyists have a lot of clout, and they have a lot of power
and a lot of money.
And what they've created is a system that is very, very expensive and doesn't make people more healthy.
Right.
So we have people that don't have insurance. We have people that used to be eligible for Medicaid that aren't eligible anymore. People that have Medicaid can't get into the doctor for months at a time when they're sick or injured now. So they're forced to go to the emergency room.
And we pay for it anyway.
And it is incredibly expensive to do that. Right. So the political will comes from people that are not able to get outside of the lobbying and all the money that's really forcing people to keep the status quo in place.